Guys, girls, lads and ladies, welcome back to the Hazard Gaming channel. In this video, we're just going to go over the Chapter 2 bosses and just maybe a few little tactics that are used and you might find useful when you face up against them. So let's get started. Next up we have Langley Fwoah. I believe that's how it's pronounced. I'd say Langley Garba. So pretty much he's just a giant frog, giant electric frog, throws down a lot of electrical damage, shock damage. And the best way I found fighting him was pretty much stick to sort of his back side, like not back side as in his butt, but like his side but towards the back a bit more. Generally if you hang at the front you're going to get smashed with all of these abilities, and at the back he tends to like to kick you at the back with both his legs, and you can sort of see it coming. You can potentially dodge that, but yeah, he does it pretty quick. He doesn't really wind up for it, so another reason to stay away from the front. He eats you and takes away a lot of your health, probably 2/3. As long as I could sort of stick to the back here and hang around the back and sort of the side a little bit, generally I can avoid most of his abilities and yeah, eventually take him down. Next up we have Earthwolf. Now overall he was fairly easy to beat. His moves are fairly telegraphed and he's generally a slow attacker, but I will say where he is right now, in this back sort of area where you drop into the arena, keep him away from. Main reason being he tends to reset when he gets to a certain spot or two here. There's a couple of little spots where he just seemed to reset. Now I thought maybe it was part of it, like a second phase or something, but 99% sure he just reset, which can be annoying considering I think one of the attempts I had him nearly dead pretty easily. Yeah, I mean he didn't really pose too much of a threat. I used the thrust stance a fair bit. He stops him in his tracks when he's doing his charge. When it comes to abilities, no real need to have anything specific. Generally, yeah, you just sort of kite him around a bit, just dodge out of the way of his highly telegraphed shots, and yeah, if you see him charging at you, line up your thrust heavy attack. Yeah, it'll knock him on his butt. The main thing is, yeah, just keep him away from that back area there where you drop into the arena. Pretty much right there in those buildings, because there's a couple of spots. I think it happened in 2 different spots. Yeah, he reset and I had to do it all over again. Might be one here where he might reset right here somewhere. From memory, he was nearly dead, and there he goes. See, and I'm like, what's going on here? So yeah, just keep him away from that area. I think in my final attempt, as you see now, I keep him up the back there and just find him around this area. And here we have a duo, King of Flowing Sands and Second Prince of Flowing Sands. Now essentially they are father and son, with the king being the little runt of the two and the son is the bigger ogre looking guy. Pretty sure they're actually rats. Pretty much you spend most of the fight fighting the son. He's the one who does most of the damage, whereas the father sort of sits up on the pillars, as you can see in the background, just throws rocks at you. Sometimes he comes down on the ground, and there was one attempt where I actually took out the father first, which I do not recommend, as it pretty much sets the son into a berserk rage, does more damage, is a lot faster, is a lot tougher, and essentially I didn't survive that attempt. So the next one I didn't even focus on the father at all, just dodged his rocks and focused on the son. One thing is though, if you put the son between you and the father, the rocks will hit the son and do tiny bits of damage, but can also interrupt him, and he makes a couple of comments from being hit by the rocks, so it can give you some openings that you might not have had otherwise. Essentially, yeah, just dodge around. He's fairly well telegraphed. Another big slow sort of enemy, does big slow hits, and yeah, fairly easy to avoid. I think he does shock damage as well. Essentially not too hard of a fight, just focus on the son. Now another thing is that don't know what actually happens if you kill the father first and then take out the son. I'm not sure if that changes anything, or I'm assuming it does, because what happens after take out the son and leave the father alive, the father runs away, and essentially you'll see it later on. Yeah, I'm assuming that it can only change what happens later on, but that would be for another playthrough, I guess. So yeah. Now the next one we have here is Mother of Stones, and basically this is a stationary boss but summons adds constantly once it gets to certain thresholds of the health bar, and pretty much they are the jumping and pummeling sort of enemies that you see around the local area. They also shoot, as you just seen. It was a fairly easy boss fight in regards to, obviously defeating the boss. The boss didn't actually do anything. I'm pretty sure in the lore that these summons are just the protectors of the Mother of Stones. They get a little bit harder as the fight goes on. They get more numerous. Essentially it's this crowd control and just learning the telegraphs of these lower enemies. Pretty much just stay away from their ranged attacks. And obviously when you get up close, they can hit you pretty hard with their melee. So it's pretty much just a hit and run sort of fight. Yeah, and just concentrate on one, take one down at a time. That way you sort of reduce the amount of ranged attack coming your way. Yeah, nothing too much else to say about this one. A pretty basic sort of boss. Recommend taking it out though. It is an optional boss due to something later on in the area, which you'll find out once you take it out. The next optional boss I found was the Man in Stone. Requires a certain item to be able to activate him. Not sure exactly what he says without the item. He does have a bit of dialogue at the start. Essentially just a very, very basic fight. Pretty much a bigger version of the enemies you fought against the Mother of Stone. Don't think he shoots anything. From memory, didn't have a ranged attack. Pretty much just all melee. A lot of jumping and pummeling and falling. Very basic, very easy to take out. Yeah. The next boss I encountered is the Stone Vanguard. Essentially a big rock monster. Does a lot of big telegraphed hits. I find a lot of these bosses in this area are pretty easy to take down, mainly because of that. It is easy to see what's coming. With this one, I found it particularly easy once I was hanging out the back of the monster a fair bit. It seemed to not be able to turn quick enough to catch me. The only caveat to that is it's ground pound followed by a secondary AoE that sort of surrounds the enemy. As you can see, the spikes popping up from the ground. Fairly easy to avoid. When its fists are glowing, you know that the secondary is coming. So you pretty much just time the roll or do what I do and just keep rolling until it goes past. Found just hanging out around the back behind him. He struggled to sort of do much to me. I think I did him in 2 goes. Not a major threat, but I don't think he's an optional. I think he's a mandatory boss. I think I only encountered this summoning ability once. Here we have Shigan Dung, and pretty much another rock monster in the same actual arena as Stone Vanguard. Now, the attacks are a little bit different. It does a lot more AoE rather than not really many other attacks, to be honest. All I just remember him doing is does this big jump leap where he tries to body slam you, and then a few other little AoE ones. Same thing with the glowing fists in the ground, the Stone Vanguard. But after I did a bit of research on this boss, found out once you have the required items to summon him, because he's sort of a summon, you can essentially summon him and run over to Stone Vanguard, and they will essentially fight each other, with obviously the loser losing and the winner being severely damaged. So that would be fairly good advantage, although I didn't find Stone Vanguard too difficult either. Maybe I'm over leveled for this area, because I did find a lot of these bosses fairly easy, or maybe it's just a bit of practice and just getting good at the old dodging and picking up the telegraphs. Yeah, another big hitter with long slow telegraphs. Next up, we have the first prince of the Flowing Sands, who is essentially the brother of the second prince, obviously, and another son of the king. So this is the optional, sorry, not the optional, this is the one I'm not sure about if it's going to vary depending on whether you take out the father or not in the first fight earlier on in the game, earlier on in the area. My theory is that if you take him out, you might find him in a different spot. Not too sure, but because I didn't take the father out, father sort of pretty much summons him to this area, and I took him out, I think, first go. No dramas. Once again, telegraphed attacks, hang out behind him. The thrush stance, I think, staggers him a bit too, which is helpful. Does have a tail attack at the back, should just watch out for. But yeah, just literally just swipes at you. No real elemental damage that I could see. Yeah, I think it was one of the quickest ones I did. Didn't even break a sweat. As you can see here, Gornskis. And here we have the Tiger Vanguard. Now, this guy, once again, was fairly easy. I think it got him on my second or third go. Basically, rush in when you have an opening, get a few hits in, and then duck out again, dodge whatever he's throwing at you. There's a variety of different attacks, from melee punches, kicks, to sword swipes. When you do sit further back in the pool, you'll summon little cyclones of what is essentially red water. You get my drift, and just dodge those. I think he does a few other ranged attacks, essentially swipes that fly through the red water like that. Pretty much just cuts. Just dodge those. Nothing too dramatic. I did comment on in my playthrough on how not terrifying he looks. He pretty much looks like a pussycat with his face and his eyes, not really menacing at all. So I had a bit of a giggle at that. Yeah, bit of a wet lettuce I found. Didn't offer too much resistance. I thought he would, considering being a tiger and hanging out in a pool of red water. But yeah, no, it wasn't too bad. I found that he doesn't give you, there isn't much breaks between his attacks. So if he has a break, doesn't attack. Oh yeah, he does do the old stone form and then vanish and appear elsewhere. So yeah, watch out for that. Essentially just dodge back a few times and he'll appear. Yeah, I found freezing him, that you get a good amount of hits in. Probably the most effective one was the freeze out of all of them that I found. I think I tried to cast the multi-attack, the summoning attack that you have. You summon more copies of yourself. So I can't remember the ability off the top of my head right now. And I think I found that, like I was saying before earlier, there's not much break between his attacks. So I wasn't able to summon it. It is a little bit of a longer summon. I think I do get it out at one point, only just so. I think I cop an attack, cop a hit. Anyway, Tiger Vanguard. And finally, we have the chapter boss, who is the Yellow Wind Sage. Essentially, he has shock damage. He was actually quite a difficult fight, not as difficult as other ones I've had. I think it took me about 9 attempts. So basically, he has a lot of varied attacks. He's quite fast, and his attacks obviously do a lot of damage, being the chapter boss. A lot of swipes, a lot of spikes. Tactics I tried the multi-summon ability. That was alright. That didn't seem to do too much damage. One of the abilities I did find very useful was the stone armor ability. The name of it escapes me, but it's pretty much where you turn into a rock or an iron golem for about 1.5 to 2 seconds. Timing it, you have to obviously time it pretty well due to the fact that he does a lot of attacking. It's quite easy to time it right. Every now and then he does, once he gets to a certain, I think about 3/4 or maybe might even be 2/3, he does turn into a sand wisp spirit. Pretty much just dodge those attacks. You can't actually hit him. Every now and then he also does summon, wasn't able to see what it was, but some sort of monster falls from the sky. I think it actually comes out of the ground and then drops from the sky, and I'm unable to sort of, tried a few times to capture what it was. It could be actually the head that he holds that he lets go and ends up floating around in the air for a while. Could be that just growing in size and dropping down on your head. But essentially, when you see it coming, just give it a few moments and dodge at the last minute. It's pretty easy to dodge. It's not a fast attack, but it does do a lot of damage, so you don't want to get hit by it. Once he gets to, I think about 2/3 down, about 1/3 left, he essentially is hiding behind the wind wall, and you can't actually hit him. I found that hard way where I froze him and couldn't actually reach him. So you pretty much just wait for him. He stands back there and he throws a few things at you, a few ranged attacks. At one point he'll throw his trident, and then he obviously has to come and grab it, so then he'll jump back into the arena and grab it, and that's when you unload on him. But yeah, I found the stone armor, or the iron armor ability, probably the most helpful one out of all of them. Freeze is alright obviously, but because he's a boss he doesn't freeze for too long, and your hits don't do an awful lot of damage per hit, so to speak, as you can probably see as I'm hitting him. When it comes to this special, I think I had the ram ability due to the fact that it can knock him over. One thing that was good also is the thrust stance. It's pretty good at reaching him. I think it does like a little bit of an interrupt as well. I don't think it actually knocked him on the ground with it, so it's just good for an interrupt. Give you a moment or two to do something. But yeah, you pretty much just have to learn his patterns. It took me a while to sort of learn the patterns, and then you get into sort of a different phase and a few different abilities. Yeah, it wasn't too dramatic, not as bad as White-Clad Noble. He still holds, he was still the most difficult for me. Not sure if anyone else had as much drama as I had with him. No, this guy wasn't too bad. And yeah, that wraps up Chapter 2 bosses that I encountered. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. I hope some of my tips will help you. If you're stuck on any bosses, feel free to message me in the comments, and let's get on to Chapter 3.